Big the Cat is a character that exists. This could be said of any character, but it's the only concise way I can think to describe Big's reputation as a character. He's a character that's only really been playable twice. He's not exactly a character that you'd think of when thinking of the series. While in some respects that's by design, I feel in regards to him as a fully realized character, he's being done a disservice. Big is a character that people are familiar with, but most people that know of him likely only go off his voice and obsession with Froggy alone. They probably couldn't really tell you who Big is as a person and what he's actually about, leaving Big to be seen more as a joke rather than an actual character. And I believe Big deserves better than being seen solely as a joke character, because as an actual character, Big offers the series something no other character does: an emotional anchor. He's a character with a big heart and little worry. He has an infectious aura, one that provides a calming sense of ease wherever he goes. But that's not often how he's seen. Big's debut in Sonic Adventure is a head-scratcher. For some reason, Sega wanted a character whose playstyle broke up the action of the game, giving players a sort of reprieve from the constant high-octane action. But their way of going about it was questionable. Also, they made the Chow Garden in the same game. You didn't need to make an entire character to achieve this. You already made an entire optional game mode that was infinitely better at achieving this goal. In fact, it was so good at meeting this goal that to this day, people still want to see the Chow Garden make a return, which is a sentiment that most people don't seem to have towards Big's gameplay from this game. Sega's known for cramming fishing games in just about every game they make, but usually in those games, these actually manage to be fun and typically have some level of depth that makes them actually engaging, leaving them as a fun distraction at worst. But most importantly, they aren't mandatory to complete the main game. Big's gameplay is extremely basic and not very interesting. Paired with the fact that his story is mandatory to complete in order to get the final story of the game, he kind of just exists as a chore. Big's story is not remotely hard. Anyone that has the reading capacity of a fetus can beat it very easily. As an actual toddler, I specifically recalled each character has a controls menu before selecting them. I saw the down tilt, and then it was smooth sailing from there. You find Froggy in the water, you cast your line, then you press down on the stick when Froggy bites. That's it. Rinse and repeat for 3 more stages. Anyone who knows the game even slightly well can easily speedrun his story in around 20 minutes just going at a brisk pace. Only one stage can be considered as having a challenge, and that's only because there are dud spots to fish in, forcing you to do exploration. But of course, that's giving it a little too much credit. The real concern is in the matter of why was Big included, and why was he given such a basic fishing game mode? While I can understand the idea behind Big's inclusion to slow things down, the way they went about it just feels completely intrusive. Big's gameplay doesn't really fit into the series at all. Instead of trying to find a way to adapt a fishing game to the style of Sonic, creating an interesting spin on it that manages to fit in with the series, it just sticks out like a sore thumb because of the intent behind it. There are enemies in his stages, but they're pretty easy to avoid entirely, which would make you think that Big can't fight. Hilariously, Big can. He can fling his rod and slaughter anything within 2 feet of him. It's a bit finicky, but really satisfying when it does connect. The objective in Big stages is always just to catch Froggy. While there are other fish you can catch, there's no real actual incentive to do so. Increasing the points for the stage isn't relevant unless you're intending to 100% the game, and that's the only thing they offer. They only really serve as potential obstacles towards catching Froggy, but even then, they aren't exactly hard to avoid, so I hesitate to genuinely consider them as obstacles. They don't add a legitimate dynamic to his gameplay, so everything about Big's gameplay just feels out of place. It's like they realized including an entire character around a fishing game was jarring, but instead of reworking it into something more in line with the series, they opted to make it as basic as possible so people could easily clear it in no time, assuming they can read basic instructions. Failing to realize this defeats the entire purpose of his inclusion. If you're operating under this notion of making a character functionally skippable, you should be reevaluating the character's inclusion as a whole. While the Chow Garden was hardly fleshed out as a concept in the first adventure game, they could have given Big more of a unique gameplay role in tying his fishing to affecting the Chow Garden, either by giving the Chow fish for some sort of benefit, similar to how you use the animals you collect in action stages. Could have also maybe even had him selling his fish to the market to help you pay for anything you want to buy for your chows, making his gameplay a potentially more relaxing way to farm rings for the Chow Garden. It'd still feel kind of out of place narratively, but it would have at least been a way to make his gameplay feel like it serves more purpose in the game beyond a mandatory distraction, as well as provide a minor showcase of Big's caring nature, having him look out for little guys other than Froggy. If Big's gameplay wasn't enough of a setback for him, his role in the story is practically non-existent. He sort of just exists. Characters hardly even acknowledge his existence, and when they do, they act like they've seen an SCP and steer clear of him.
Where's the moon?
Weird. Now where was I? Oh yeah, the Chaos Emerald. Perfect!
Big technically has an important role by virtue of Froggy being important, but it's all incidental. None of it feels like it contributes anything meaningful to the story. This is the climactic moment of Big's story.
Hooray!
After stealing the tornado, Big has no other role to fulfill in the story. He doesn't have any deeper interactions with other members of the cast. He doesn't really become friends with them or help them out. He's just a random bystander caught up in this crazy mess. And while it is funny, it's all he really provides to the game overall. And that alone doesn't really warrant him being a part of it. He's a character with no purpose beyond just the desire to have something to slow the game down. And when that's all that he amounts to, it clearly doesn't leave him with the best first impression. Sonic Frontiers featured a fishing minigame that isn't necessary for completing the game and is far more relaxing to interact with in its integration. And while it does feature Big, he's just there. It wasn't another opportunity to really smooth over this misstep with his character, only serving to remind us that it happened in the first place. The only other entry where Big was playable was in Heroes, a game that sort of condenses characters into being formulaic copy and paste gameplay roles. Big ends up serving as the power role for Team Rose. He does have his own unique design attributes, but generally he fulfills the same purpose as every other power character in the game. His distinct gameplay traits at least do make him a joy to play as though. He's pretty fun to use either in just mindlessly mashing his belly flop or in flinging Amy and Cream at enemies. He can also swing his rod around with an actual weapon attached to it so that it's actually lethal, but it feels a little too jank to use efficiently. This goes hard as fuck. Big also has a parasol to either use to gently glide across areas or to fly up with over air currents. This didn't feel particularly fun or good to use, but it does have potential. Overall, he actually feels relatively realized in terms of gameplay concepts tied to his character, all while actually fitting the game's pace. But unfortunately, he never gets the chance to evolve from this. It's also just not explained how Big ended up becoming friends with Amy. They don't even bump into one another during adventure. But Hero starts and just acts like these three have been an established friend group already. While it's not exactly developed or established, we do see through his inclusion in this game that Big is the type to help out his friends when they really need it, choosing to tag along with Amy and Cream to find Chocola and Froggy, who's gone missing again. But unfortunately, this is the only time Big really gets to showcase that aspect of his character in the mainline series. While Sonic Adventure 2 came out before Heroes, in it, Big constantly shows up as random cameos in certain stages. even in places he really shouldn't be. While I imagine the intent behind it was all in good fun, I can't help but feel like it was a moment of acknowledging just how intrusive his character was, aiming to make him more into a gag. And considering the fact Heroes was the last time he saw a genuine spotlight, I can't help but feel like his inclusion was solely based on being a perfect fit for a power role that Team Rose could have. Although, apparently, according to Mayakawa, they originally planned a team of Chaos, Big, and Gamma. While I don't know how you would have made that work, and this likely would have contributed further to framing him as a gag character, I still kind of wish we got to see that team up. It would have been a fitting, unlikely trio, as all of them are caring souls with lacking social skills. Of course, Gamma would instead become Omega for this game, deciding to let both Gamma and Chaos remain retired from the series, with Big and Rouge swapping places, and Shadow being the character that isn't allowed to retire in death. Also, it's crazy to think we almost saw the Fighters characters come back way earlier. I can't believe they did this to Bark. Outside of Heroes, Big has been mostly relegated to the background of games and the butt of jokes, focusing on how his stages are frustrating for the illiterate, or how they just don't really contribute anything meaningful to the game. How he constantly shows up in Adventure 2 as a gag, his funny voice. Did you know he's voiced by Duke Nukem?
Time to nurse a baby bird I found in my yard back to health, and then tearfully set it free once it reaches healthy adulthood.
And Froggy! Though, I don't see much in reference to his Heroes outing, which comes across to me that all Big will ever be seen as in the eyes of the general public is the unfortunate circumstance that was his character in Adventure 1. Big from his debut is defined by his relationship with Froggy, yet in Adventure that relationship doesn't have any real depth to it. So Big is only really seen through a comedic lens because there's no real viewer attachment to their friendship. It doesn't help that a character having a pet in a world of anthros is a bit odd. Of course, they can always make an origin story of Big and Froggy to actually provide depth and care to their relationship, but where would you put that story? This issue with pre-established relationships also extended to Heroes. So there just hasn't really been any opportunities for people to get attached to Big as a character. There's not really been a chance to see him interact and develop alongside other characters. While I don't think Big needs a game of his own, or an abundance of time in the spotlight, I do think he still needs a definitive moment in the mainline games to set a purpose for him in the series. He's an extremely caring and chill person. He doesn't really get caught up in adventure like the others do, preferring to keep to himself, fish, and just enjoy daily life with Froggy. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to be in the spotlight regularly, but he doesn't even really make sense to be around in general either. And that's what I want to see finally solved with Big. Circling back to his motivation in Heroes, he joined up with Amy and Cream in order to help rescue Chocola, displaying that while he isn't the adventurous sort, helping others is his main calling, so it's not like Big as a character would never realistically show up again. I think there's always an opportunity to use Big as an anchor for other characters and stories. I could very well see a story wherein a character ends up in the presence of Big, in need of help, and he's more than willing to oblige. And despite said character being in a high-stress situation, Big's presence helps them feel at ease and helps them keep a cool head. I think having Big set up as someone that helps others he comes across is a way to keep him around on occasion while staying true to his character, making genuine use of his proclivity to wind up in unlikely scenarios as a means of actually making him fit in. The only character pairing with Big that feels criminal to have never happened is with Blaze. I don't know how they managed to make two purple cat characters and then proceed to never have them interact with one another. Of course, I don't think Big should just interact with her for that reason alone. Big is a supporting character, so I'd like to see him interact with someone that would bounce off him really well. I think the contrast between Blaze's headstrong nature would do well paired with Big's more laid-back nature. There's also the physical contrast of Big being a massive passive. Another facet of Big's character that makes me want to see more of him is the fact that he's a gentle giant. Not exactly being very bright, but is an extremely caring person who displays a high level of emotional intelligence, something that contributes to his friendship with Amy at least making sense on paper. I really enjoy a big oaf who, despite their lacking knowledge, always wants to help others more than anything else. only seeking peace for everyone. And that's something no other character but Big offers the series. It's ironic that Frontiers had the emotional core of its narrative directly tied to Big incidentally. But I think that unintended happenstance makes it all the more apparent that he deserves to still be around. Big is a character that provides the series with a serene heart and a comforting calmness. Something that's worth having around from time to time. He only needs to be better fit into the framework of the games. I just hope that someday we see him play a more prevalent role in a game. One that he actually definitively belongs in. After all, every day is another trouble-free day with Big the Cat.